I have just publicly posted on my main YouTube channel in the description box the PDF files of every artery scan I've ever done over the years. Every single one. You can download them, upload them, view them offline, ask me any questions. To my knowledge, I'm the only person on social media who's done this. And Ken Berry has not done this. Let's have some fun and talk about that. Quick reminder, heart attacks and strokes, #1 killer in the world by far. More people will die before their time than any other chronic disease from a heart attack or a stroke. More people will be maimed, living in suffering from a non-fatal heart attack or a stroke, the vast majority of which are caused by atherosclerosis, plaquing of the arteries, plaque in the neck arteries, plaque in the coronary arteries, the heart arteries, okay? If a plaque lesion ruptures, the body thinks it's bleeding to death, rushes to the scene of the crime to form a blood clot. That cuts off oxygen. If it happens in your neck, there's your stroke. If it happens in your heart arteries, there's your heart attack. Now, it doesn't have to happen. This is entirely preventable. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the medical profession and the vast majority of social media influencers don't stress the importance of getting these scans done. And what was my channel all about? I am nagging you guys all the time. Go get a CIMT scan done. Carotid intermedia thickness scan. It's an ultrasound of the neck. Why that particular scan? Because there's zero radiation involved. Unlike the coronary scans, CAC and CT angiogram, there's radiation involved in them. A CIMT, there's no radiation. It's just a 10-minute ultrasound. Costs $200, maybe $250, okay? It checks for calcified plaque. It checks for non-calcified plaque. It checks for the thickening of the arteries. And you can use a CIMT as often as you like to track your plaque. You can't really use the coronary scans to track your plaque because who's going to go and subject themselves to radiation on a regular basis anyway? Whereas with a CIMT, that's exactly what you can do. Now, I've just publicly posted all my scans. Why? PDF file, by the way. So you can just download them offline, look at them. If you have any questions, you get to see the good, the bad, the ugly, the embarrassing, what works, what doesn't work. It's all out there. Because my channel is going to be different than every other channel that you subscribe to. This is going to be me walking the walk, okay? Not talking the talk, walking the walk. So many social media educators and influencers refuse to walk the walk. They're all this, blah, 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 blah. When have you ever seen your favorite influencers publicly post the PDFs of any artery scan? Anyone? Anyone? Your favorite influencers? Anyone done that? Ever seen them? They're in the description box on my channel, okay? I am showing my audience how I'm regressing plaque in real time. Not theory, not talking the talk, not saying my diet's better than your diet, although it probably is. Certainly when it comes to Ken Berry, right? But actual N=1 results. So listen, I'm going to nag you. I'm going to nag you every single video until you go do it. Go to CARDIORISK.com. I don't have any affiliation with them, but they're nationwide. They do CIMTs and book to get your neck scanned. Okay, just go do it. And then if it ends up saving your life, you can come back into the comments down later on and say, thanks Simon for nagging me, I finally went and did it. And obviously if you get results that you don't like, go see your doctor. And then when you realize your doctor's talking bollocks, you can say, Simon, I think my doctor's talking bollocks because he wants me on statin monotherapy, which is profoundly, remarkably stupid. And I'm not even anti-statin. It's just stupid to do statin monotherapy. We can certainly get into that. But before we go any further, I got to explain something. The word bollocks, for those of you that might be, offended, it's not a rude word. How many of you, like me, are Sex Pistols fans? 1977, the greatest album ever written. Never mind the bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols. It's not a rude word. Now, at the time that album came out, it's a little bit controversial, right? There was a record shop owner in Nottingham, in the middle of England, that displayed the album sleeve in the window. Never mind the bollocks. He got arrested under the Indecency Act of England at the time in 1977. There was a criminal trial on this. Richard Branson, then young hippie Richard Branson, who owned Virgin Records, put the money up to defend the record shop owner and the Sex Pistols in court. And they actually hired a local priest, this is a true story, to testify as to why that word bollocks wasn't a rude word. And the magistrates had to reluctantly find them not guilty, all right? So any of you that are snowflakes, listen, look it up online, right? Nottingham Crown Court, 1977, Sex Pistols and the record shop owner, not guilty. So why is bollocks an important word? I'll tell you why. Because every time I go online and I listen to folks in the healthcare space, the wellness influencer type space, so much of the time I will listen to what they say and I go, oh, never mind the bollocks, really. Certainly when it comes to Ken Berry, I'm like, what? How does this guy have 3.6 million subscribers? I end up thinking that. I'm sure that someone's going to get offended by that. I like Ken. Oh, I'm very happy. When's Ken ever posted an artery scan on his YouTube channel? Anyone seen a scan from Ken? Because you got all mine in the description box. I think it's about time we started holding social media influencers accountable. If a social media influencer who has hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers, they become, and this is a legal expression, a public figure. And when you're a public figure, in my opinion, you have a responsibility to your audience to say things that are as ethical as you can when it comes to heart attack and stroke risk. And so much of the time, I see so bad information being published online. And I end up thinking to myself, people could actually be harmed by this if they listen to this bollocks. They really could, because if they're not going to the doctors when they should, or if they're following information and getting themselves into trouble. That's why I decided to do my channel, right? When I started regressing plaque, I'm like, I gotta go share this with whoever wants to listen, right? Because I'm not here to be a social media star. I don't really care. But if I know something that can help you, yes, you, and maybe someone you love, and maybe someone you care about, not have a heart attack or a stroke, then that's why I'm here. So let's just play some of the clips from Ken Berry, who went over his lab work with his wife. I think this was a couple of years ago, 2024 lab work. I forget when it was posted. I think he posted it in 2025. I could be wrong. Because there's certain things he's saying about his lab work, and I'm just like, again, Ken, he seems like a nice guy, but I'm like, never mind the bollocks. So let's play some of the clips of Ken Berry, who promotes a ketogenic diet. High meat, what he calls a proper human diet, which I call a bollocks diet. High meat, your LDL's fine to be high as long as you're insulin sensitive. That's kind of the central theme of his channel. Let me be very clear what my channel's all about. There's three things that matter, okay? Yes, absolutely, you gotta be insulin sensitive. Insulin resistance is a big, huge problem. But the idea that you need to be on a ketotic diet to be insulin sensitive is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The idea that you can't eat a chickpea curry or purple sweet potatoes because they're full of carbohydrates, absolute bollocks. You don't need to be on a ketotic diet to be insulin sensitive. So let's just spell that. It's very important, but forget this idea of being on a keto diet. Low inflammation, super important. And finally, you gotta have low ApoB and low LDL for as many years and decades as possible. It's not one thing, it's all three. So when they're basically saying, these ketotic promoters, oh, well, you know, as long as you're insulin sensitive and you've got low inflammation, your LDL is fine to be high. Bollocks. No, it isn't. That's not what the science says, okay? And anyone promoting that needs to hold themselves accountable and post their scans online. That's my attitude. So let's play some of the clips from Ken Berry, public figure Ken, who's got over 3 million subscribers, talking about his own blood work, so I can comment on them, then we'll wrap up.
And then there's my glycated albumin that they messed up, but I don't need that because I have an A1C of 5.5. And remember, my A1C at its highest was 6.1 back when I was very pre-diabetic after I tried to follow the American Diabetes Association diet, and it went from 5.7 to 6.1. So eating just meat and eggs, it's 5.5, which I'm very happy with.
Let me see if I get this straight. Ken Berry is saying he has an HbA1c of 5.5, and the inference is that that's good? What? Oh, never mind the bollocks, really. 5.5 is not good. 5.5 is 0.2 away from being pre-diabetic. Optimal on HbA1c is 4.8 to 5.3. For him to go out there publicly and say and infer that 5.5 is fine is very far from fine. Last time I did my HbA1c, it was 5.2. I eat carbohydrates with practically every meal. So if carbohydrates, if you seriously restrict them the way he does, then why is his HbA1c 5.5? 5.5, folks, is not a good HbA1c for a public figure, influencer, promoting the merits of insulin sensitivity. It's far from optimal. Why aren't people in his audience saying, hold on a minute, Ken, that doesn't look so good? It's just mind-boggling. I think it's because people want to belong, groupthink. I've got no idea. 5.5 is not good, okay? Let's get on to the next thing he says.
And now the lipid panel. Non-HDL cholesterol high at 201. LDL particle number high at 2867. LDL small, 354 high. Total cholesterol, 255, which is high.
Folks, you just heard Ken Berry say he's got high levels, small dense LDL particles. He's got high levels of it. and he's inferring that it's okay. What the heck is he talking about? That's complete bollocks. Small, dense LDL particles are the most dangerous kind of particles that can contribute significantly to atherosclerosis, plaquing of the arteries. It's not cool. It's not okay. People need to have their feet held to the fire over this. That's just not okay that he says that or infers it.
And then my apolipoprotein B is high, and my LP(a) is high. So according to Dr. Attia and Dr. Lipid, all these guys, that's his Twitter handle.
Okay, gotcha.
I can't think of his actual name, but that's his handle. I'm going to die any minute, according to that. But I've looked into these tests extensively. They're, in my opinion, still experimental, and I predict that over the next few years, they'll fall by the wayside and people won't even talk about them.
He just said that ApoB, Apolipoprotein B, and LP(a), he considers them experimental blood tests. What? Is Ken out of his mind? Experimental blood tests. What is he talking about? That is the biggest load of bollocks I've ever heard. Experimental blood tests. On what planet does he get that idea from? It's like if he gets a number he doesn't like or he thinks might look bad, he just goes, oh, well, that doesn't really matter because it's experimental. Really? Experimental. Let me spell this out in black and white. First of all, on ApoB. ApoB is a more relevant blood marker than LDL cholesterol because it tracks the number of vehicles on the road, if you will, lipoproteins, LDLs, IDLs, VLDLs that can cause atherosclerosis. So ApoB, Apolipoprotein B, is a very important marker, extremely important. You want to have it as low as possible for as many years and decades as possible, okay? It's not experimental. That's just ridiculous that he says that. But then what is really troubling is when he talks about having elevated levels of LP(a) and how he calls that experimental and infers that, it's not that important. This is where I go from he's talking bollocks to he's actually saying things that could really harm people here. This is where it becomes an ethical issue for me. When you're a public figure, right? When you put yourself out there with millions of subscribers and you say things like that, if to any extent that has an influence on someone to believe that it doesn't really matter if you've got elevated LP(a), perhaps someone doesn't follow up and perhaps someone doesn't talk to their doctor or cardiologist about it, and then they end up having a heart attack or a stroke. I have a problem with that kind of misinformation, and that's what it is in my opinion. Elevated LP(a), which is primarily genetically driven, it's not really affected by diet and lifestyle, and there's no medications that directly lower it. PCSK9 inhibitors have shown some data to lower it a bit, but there's no direct pharmaceutical to lower LP(a). It's primarily genetic, okay? It's very, very dangerous. Anyone that has elevated LP(a) is at significant increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, that's just a fact. Okay, so when he's trying to downplay it, he's giving out terrible, terrible, terrible ideas and information to the public. And he needs to be held to account for this, okay? It's just not okay that he says that. But let's go to the final clip he says.
Also, he is going to get a CAC, but the machine was down or they couldn't get us in something, so we're going to have to go back and do that on another day. But yes, we are going to, well, I don't think I'm going to get it done, but he is going to get it done. Okay, I'll do it too. Yeah,
it takes 5 minutes. Yeah, but I'm going to get a CAC, and then if it's not 0, then I'm going to get a carotid artery intimal thickness, maybe get a CT angiogram, depending on what my CAC score is.
We should have all the tests.
Yeah, I do too, without getting too much radiation.
All right, let me just comment on that. You heard Ken Berry say in this video, which I think is now a year or 2 old, that he's going to go get coronary artery calcium scan done. Maybe even get a CIMT, the carotid intermediate thickness scan that I promote, done. Maybe even a CT angiogram done. Like I said, his video that I'm clipping from is a year or 2 old. I haven't seen any follow-up anywhere on his channel. I can't find any evidence of him posting any type of scan result on his channel. None. He says in the video he's going to go do it. Where's the evidence that he's done it? Now, that means one of 2 things. Either he said he was going to go get a scan done and then didn't get any scans done. Maybe he doesn't want to know what his plaque burden is. Or he did get a scan done or multiple scans done and has decided not to share it with his audience. Either way, I have a huge problem with this. Because even in the most charitable review of the world, which is one was to believe his nonsense about LP(a) and ApoB being experimental and not that important, even if one was to believe that nonsense, wouldn't you think at a minimum he'd post his own scans to say, see, In me, my arteries are clear. I've not seen any evidence that he's done that. So he's giving out terrible information. He's not publicly posted his own scans, and he has 3 million subscribers. How is this possible? You tell me in the comment section, how is this possible? When I started posting my own scan results, you can see going back to June of 2025, my first CARDIORISK scan, my arteries, the age, the intermediate thickness was 20 years older than me. This is not a good result for me. I'm showing you how my scan results are a concern to me. But what I'm also showing you is how I'm actively regressing that plaque in real time. This isn't I regressed plaque once several years ago. Any of you fans of Ford Brewer? I love Ford. Ford's great in it because he promotes CIMTs, another influencer. But he had I think 1 year when he regressed plaque. That was like 8 years ago, and hasn't had a year since then. Again, nice guy, good guy. But listen, I'm showing you real time, right? I'm getting CIMTs done every 3 months, which admittedly is a little overkill. Once a year is probably enough, or every 6 months to be aggressive. But I'm posting it all online. Ken Berry, millions of people out there promoting a message that essentially says high LDL is not a big problem if you're insulin sensitive, ApoB is experimental, LP little a. Terrible ideas, terrible information. And I can't find any evidence that he's ever posted a single of his own scans to say, look, I'm clean, my arteries are clean, not one. And it's not just him. There's so many of them like this. I hope that you watch and subscribe to my channel, right? That if nothing else, even if you're a blow your LDL through the roof kind of a guy and you disagree with me about certain things, you're going to be able to walk away and say, at least Simon is publicly posting his own stuff, because no one else is. That's one thing you're going to say about me, right? But the most important thing I want you to take away from my channel is go get yourself scanned. Seriously, just go get yourself scanned. I don't want to nag at you in every video. It's $200, $250. Go to CARDIORISK.com and get your neck scanned. Check for the intermediate thickness, check for any plaque lesions, and then you can come back on my channel, ask me any questions that you want. I'll tell you everything. Within reason, because certain platforms like to censor people that say certain things. You know, mention the word peptides, and it's like, was I allowed to just say that? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing, okay, involved in my protocol to regress plaque, which we'll get into in future videos. But listen, if you like my content, and in particular if you like the transparency in my content, click the subscribe button, will you? Drop a comment in the comments section and share this video. Go share it with all of Ken's audience and say, hey Ken, where's your scans? It'd be so great if every single one of the comments on Ken Berry's videos is, hey Ken, a few years ago, you said you were going to get scans done. Any update on that? Let's see what he has to say. Anyway, hope you enjoyed today's content, and I will catch you next time.